Hi everyone, it's Justine and welcome to the Distress Oxide event put on by myself as well as Josephine. So this is day 2 and my last day, and the next 2 videos are going to happen on her channel, so I'll link to that below if you want to go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out. Okay, so we are also giving away some sets of Distress Oxide inks. For today's giveaway, you're going to have to head over to my blog. It's in the video description below, and it'll let you know what you need to do in order to win a Distress full set of inks. Today I'm going to go through 5 ways of using Distress inks, and we're going to start off with blending. As everyone knows, I blend very often with Distress inks for my cards. I do have to say I actually like the Distress Oxide better than the regular Distress inks because of a few reasons. First of all, it spreads the color a lot faster having the mixture of pigment and dye ink in one ink pad. I still follow the same rules. Generally, I start off the paper and work my way in. I use the circular motion. However, I find the pressure of your hand doesn't matter as much. If you happen to get a harsh line on your distress blending, then all you need to do is just keep blending it out, and it's very forgiving as opposed to the regular distress inks, which seep into the paper right away and just kind of get stuck there. The pigment allows you time to move it around. Now with the Distress Oxide inks, I notice I have to go back and forth between the 2 colors for sure every time. I didn't have to do this all the time with regular Distress inks, only sometimes, but I do have to do that if I don't want the harsh lines in between the colors and I want them to blend well. To me, this isn't a big deal, but it might mean for those of you who have just one blending tool that you might want to invest in a second one to make it easier. As you can see, I just keep going back and forth between the first color and the color before it, and I'm going on, and I'm going to create a very colorful, vibrant rainbow background. Now, the cool part about these oxides, you might think they don't look a lot different than the regular inks. Now, it's the way that they react with water that's different. So I'm going to go ahead, and I don't have the fancy Distress spray bottles, so I'm just going to use my mini mister, and I'm going to spray it into the palm of my hand and flick water onto the edge. And you can see how it reacts with it, and it gives it sort of a milky tone. That's the difference between the regular Distress and the oxide, is that really milky look. So there's a look at the card that I created, just adding some simple die cuts after. Now, the second technique is watercoloring. So I wanted to give this a try because I distress ink my watercoloring, or I use distress inks for watercoloring quite often. So I'm going to do the same thing as I would do normally with regular distress inks, and I'm going to put some color onto my craft mat here, and I'm going to spray some water and get started. So I am actually using some clean water first on some watercolor paper, and I'm just saturating my paper a little bit here so that it reacts with the water. And then I'm going through with some cracked pistachio as well as broken china and faded jeans. And I think that the colors are actually really gorgeous. They're really subtle, really light. They blend easily. I'm not sure if this cracked pistachio, I just diluted it a little bit too much, so I thought I would add a little bit more to get it a bit darker. But it created a really nice wash over my card, and I'm just going to go ahead and go through this. I'm going to go from light to dark, and then I'm going to add a little bit of color in between to blend them. And this involves no talent whatsoever at watercoloring, just spreading some color around back and forth. If I can do it, anybody can. So I'm just going to heat that up here so that it dries, and then I am going to show you my final result with my card with it. So I'm using a heat tool by Ranger. I find this one really good for drying surfaces, where I find the new one that I got from Hero Arts is really good for embossing. And you can see I put that just behind a white panel with a die cut. Number 3 is stamping. So for this one here, I wanted to show you with distress inks, the regular inks, they aren't very crisp when it comes to stamping. Everybody knows that they're more of a technique-based ink than they are a stamping type of ink. So I wanted to show you what it looks like when you stamp with oxides. Okay, so I am using my creative corners here so I can put my card in the middle of the Misty, and then I'm going to stamp. What I found really effective with ink coverage is actually rubbing my ink pad over top of the background stamp, but you don't want to do it too hard because you don't want to ruin the felt. Here you can see a close-up of the background and how that looked. So I'm showing my finished products, but I'm not showing how I got the finished results, so I'm just showing you how to create the backgrounds for each of these cards. I'll have more details on my blog about that if you're interested. Number 4 is ink layering. So this is something that I've been trying lots with regular inks, with distress inks, and I think it's really fun with the Misty tool to do. And what's really cool is that you can do them with the distress inks as well. And I am just adding different colors of ink onto my stamp. and I'm just stamping in each individual color at a time. The reason why with Distress inks I could actually put all the ink color on there at once and then stamp it and see what my result would be. The Oxide inks, you can do it, but it is going to stain your ink pad. So I am putting down separate colors on separate areas and then stamping, and that's the beauty of having the Misty tool, is that you're able to do that. So I am putting down different colors and I'm just seeing what it looks like in the end. Some of the colors mixed and made a brown color, but I think that made it kind of look like a shabby chic card, and I thought it was actually really neat when it was all finished. I think this was the perfect background stamp to do such a technique with. Okay, here's the final result of that card, and you can see my final product here once I was all finished. The last technique I wanted to show you is the main thing about Distress Oxide inks, and that's creating backgrounds. Now, Distress inks are really technique inks in general, and creating backgrounds is one of the things they're used for the most. And I personally love creating backgrounds, but for me personally, I like to cut them down for the most part because I'm not a mixed media artist. I prefer clean and simple cards or one-layer cards. And for me, this isn't 100% my style, but I really like the way that these turned out and want to show you how they work. So I added 3 colors, Iced Spruce, Cracked Pistachio, and Broken China, and I just slid my card through it so I could have those 3 little separate areas. I thought that was really neat. And then I just added a little bit more. I just kind of dragged it through the mud there now and again to see what kind of result I was going to have. Now, when I was sitting in Tim Holt's workshop, he had said, if you don't like your results, you're not done yet. So you can do this over and over and create more and more layers each time. And what's really cool is because they're pigment and ink base, they set in the cardstock between each layer and make a clear definition, but they can still move with the water. So that's really cool. So I could have added 3-4 layers on top of this if I wanted to, and you can see I keep going in and adding more and more color, keep adding more and more water, and seeing how that's going to react. So in the end, I ended up having a really stunning result. And again, this is really great for mixed media work. This is really great for backgrounds, or if you're like me and like things more subtle, you can cut it down. I just used a white plain die cut on top of it, and I really like the way that it turned out. I'm going to show you this technique again with some more vibrant colors. This is Warren Lipstick, and then orange and yellow, the fossilized amber, and spice marmalade, I believe it is. And I just dragged it through, and this time I didn't make them in a line or anything like that. I just had them randomly there. And you can see how the water distresses or reacts against the ink, and I just keep going over and over with some more vibrant colors. I added a little bit of red and a little bit of pink with the Fired Brick and Warren Lipstick, and added some more of those orange and yellow tones, and I think it looked really great. So I just kept adding water, adding more layers to it, and it just got more and more exciting the more and more I went on. So it created really 2 very gorgeous cards because I ended up die cutting this and using the positive and negative aspect of the die to create both of these cards. The last thing I wanted to show you is that they are able to stamp or ink onto dark cardstock. So I'm going to use Black and Craft to show you today, and I'm going to just ink up an area using a stencil and show you how that works and how that looks. I didn't create a final card with it, however I wanted to show you that that is a possibility. So I took a balloon stencil from My Favorite Things, and I grabbed a Distress Oxide ink in orange and pink. I didn't actually like the way the 2 colors blended, so I went back in with the pink and just covered the whole thing. And then when I took off the mask, you can see here how cute that is. And then you can also see it here on some craft cardstock. The craft turned out a lot better than the black. It's a lot more vibrant and keeps its true tone better than the black, but I think both are really cool ways that you could do techniques with. So I hope you enjoyed my video on 5 ways to use Distress Oxide inks, and you're going to give something a try here. If you're interested in purchasing the Oxide inks, I have them linked below in the video description as well as on my blog. If you're interested in seeing the cards more up close, you can click there on the left to my blog. You can click on the right to subscribe to my channel, or you can click on the 2 videos I've shown which also feature Distress Oxide inks. Thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome day.